Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the Ask Me Almost Anything episode. My name is Glenn Gers. I'm sorry about the technical difficulty getting started here. I had a problem with my mic. I come to you every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone. Usually I am here doing my step-by-step project where I'm letting you look over my shoulder while I write a script in order to teach screenwriting, but every once in a while the questions pile up, and so I do just an Ask Me Almost Anything. Today's going to be chock full of some questions that we had that I think will help you, and I'm going to talk today about a bunch of notes that I found. I was looking through some old stuff I had done, and I found notes I had written to myself when I was trying to teach myself screenwriting, when I was going through the stuff that everyone else seems to be going through. Preview mode. Is anyone watching this? I'm having some technical difficulties, and I'm a little... three. Okay, now we're going. Now I'm getting some people on here. All right. So I'm going to start out with a question that I've gotten this a bunch of different times, which is... Someone will say, you talk about how the characters should do their dialogue or have their story run because of what they want. But what if my character doesn't want anything? What if they are, just not that driven by anything? Oh, hello, Pedro. Hi. All right, let me get back up here. Turn this off. A lot of people. Hello, Dan. Dan, I'm going to answer one of your questions today. Augustine, hello, this is Kitschy. Okay, everybody, people are here. I feel better. I had a bunch of technical problems setting this up today, and so I wasn't sure that anyone could see me. But apparently you guys can, which is good. So the deal here is I'm starting with the question a lot of people ask, which is, what if I have you talk about how the character drives the story about what they want, and a lot of times, especially about dialogue, someone was saying, well, what if, especially for minor characters, they don't have, they're not trying to change things in the scene. They may just be part of the action. This is very important, because no matter what, you want something. It doesn't have to be something big, but at any given moment, you are operating, every one of us is operating from wanting something. And it can be as simple as I want to make sarcastic comments about what's happening in the scene. I'm a secondary character, and I'm just going to say snarky things to the hero who's making a plan. But the point is, you do that because you want something. You want to feel superior to them. You want to make them, you want to impress somebody else in the room. For some reason, you are being provoked to speak, to say something. When you do that, you are trying to do something to someone. And this is really hard because most people, when they start out writing, they start by thinking, I need them to say this because I need to get this information to the audience, or I want the audience to know something. But the characters don't know the audience is there, and the characters know their own lives, so they don't need to talk about stuff like that unless they have a need in the moment. And like I said, that need does not have to be, I'm trying to take over the world or I'm trying to save the world. It can just be, I think Joe's a jerk, so I'm gonna tell him that his plan is dumb. Or I'm just gonna sit on the porch and watch the sunset and talk to my wife, and we're gonna enjoy the fact that we've managed to survive another day. And I just want to have the comfort of sharing that moment with the person. That's something you want. You want to do that. You want to share that. You want to enjoy that it's me and you against the world, or you want to maybe reassure them if something was happening. Whatever it is, at any given moment, a character wants something. Now, the main characters, they need to want something a lot. And this is simply, by the way, just quick hellos to Maritolitoso and to Jean. So the main thing is here that you have to know that your main character does need to want something a lot, because in order for the story to happen, they're going to have to do something. So if they don't want it a lot, they're not going to do, it's like well, I would really love to buy a new car, but I don't feel like going out and talking to the salespeople. End of story. If they want something, they have to take an action in your story. That's a story. So, and what's more, there's going to be obstacles. It's not going to be just like, oh, I want to move to a new city, so therefore get on a plane, pack my stuff, go, and I'm there. There's going to be obstacles, and those obstacles make it harder, so you have to want it a lot to get past those obstacles. You want to trade your cow for magic beans? Cool. There's going to be obstacles. You have to really want those magic beans. So in that case, the question, what if my character doesn't want anything? If it's your main character, they need to. Now, often people say, well, my character is sort of a slacker. They may be sort of a slacker, but in the story, they're doing something. Maybe all they're doing is trying to get out of doing their work. Cool. That's a slacker's ambition, is to slack. And so therefore they actively want and try to slack. They will actively avoid, lie, cheat, not show up for work, whatever it is. They're going to actively do something if this is going to be in any way a story. If you're just observing people, remember, you may just be observing people, catching real life. You're observing people who are doing things because every one of us is doing something in any given moment. Those of you who are watching this right now are actively watching this. Even if you're watching it while you're doing something else, well, then you're doing something else. And even that may not be the greatest thing to watch in a show, to watch somebody watch YouTube. But the truth is, first of all, there's a lot of scenes of that nowadays. But second of all, a story is about someone doing something. And I do have to say that it's almost impossible to not have that happen. It is possible to have a movie with no story, but if you do have a story, people are doing things. Hi, Irite. Yes, happy Cinco de Mayo to you too. Yeah. So anyway, that's my first point, is just this idea that is there such a thing as a character who doesn't want something? No. At any given moment, every human being that you see wants something. They may be riding the bus. They want to get to wherever they're going. That may require them to just ride the bus. And on the bus ride, maybe they'll daydream, or maybe they'll read a book, or maybe they will, complain. Whatever it is, that's where, but they're doing something. By the way, usually if you have something like they're riding a bus to get somewhere, you cut to the end of the ride and show them getting there. All right. So the other thing about this is the want just has to matter to them. It does not have to be earth-shaking. It does not have to be, I'm going to find love and change my life. It can be, I just want a quiet evening. It is possible. In fact, sometimes a good story is somebody who just wants a quiet evening, and then all of a sudden there's kidnappers and drug dealers, and all of a sudden, there's a movie called Date Night where that happens. This couple just wants to go out on a date, and all of a sudden they're dealing with drug dealers. That it doesn't have to be a big thing they want. They just have to want it a lot. They could just want to meet someone. Just the end of the story is them making that first introduction. And there's 1,000 reasons why they can't. And that's cool. That's a good story. Even if all that we get to is hello, and that's the end of the story. It could be really cool, actually. All right. Hello, Rachel. Did I say hi to you? Hi, Rachel. Hello, Raphael. Hello. Okay. So that's the main thing. Now there was a related question, which was, can my character change what they want in the story? And I hear this one a lot, and I understand the confusion, because people are like, you were told this person needs to want one thing in the story. But the truth is, very often people do change what they want. I don't define that as change what they want. I like to think of that as they discover what they really want. They find what they truly want, or what the circumstances bring them to want that they didn't know they wanted. So the story begins with them wanting something else. That's not the same. The story is the story of the last want. The thing that begins is the thing that they're going to have to give up. And to give an example of this, spoilers ahead, by the way, but it's for The Godfather. So A, you should know it, and B, it's old. It must have been spoiled already. The main character is Michael. Michael is the youngest of three brothers born to a mafia don. Michael has not been in the family business. He does not, and his father doesn't want him to be. He was the one who was going to go to college, and he was going to have a life, and he goes into the war. They didn't want him to go to the war, but he joined the army. He actually became a war hero. The story begins when he's coming home, and because of things that happen in the story that are not his choice, his family needs him, and he goes into the family business. And for many people, it gets destroyed. Their interpretation is. Other people think it's great. Cool, he becomes the Don. The main thing is the story begins with Michael not wanting to be in the family business. And by the end of the movie, spoiler, he has taken over the family business. That's not that he changed what he wanted. It's that in terms of, he did change what he wanted, but in terms of the story, you need to know the story you are telling is the story of how he becomes the head of the family. Like if somebody said, what's this story about? It's the story of how Michael becomes the head of the family. Now, that means that at the beginning, he's trying to do something else, and then he gets pushed into that. That story often happens. Somebody, in asking this question, they brought up the idea of Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is often used as a great example of a character with a very, very strong, simple want. He wants to take care of his family. He's a man who has cancer, and he's a chemistry teacher in high school. More spoilers ahead. And because he is suddenly realizing that he's not going to be there to take care of his family, he decides to become a drug manufacturer and eventually dealer, in order to get a lot of money very fast to take care of his family. That's the ostensible reason that he's doing all this. The truth is, as the story goes on, it becomes clear very fast and all the way through till the end that it's not the only thing he wants. That in fact, while he does want that, he wants even more to prove that he is the smartest guy in the room, to gain as much power as he can through the fact that he is so freaking smart, and he knows he's smarter than everyone else, and he has, in the course of his earlier life, been disrespected and neglected and not appreciated, and he has resented it. And so, because the truth of the story of Breaking Bad is there are several points at which he has enough money to take care of his family, and he won't stop. And that's how, and by the end, he admits it wasn't just to take care of his family. It was also the power, the joy of his discovering and using his power. The point is, if you are writing that story, you need to know the true story you are telling, which is a man who is going to destroy his life in order to prove his power. A man who is going to finally show everyone that he is the smartest guy in the room, and in the course of that, lose the family he is trying to protect and endanger everyone he loves. Sorry if you have not watched Breaking Bad, you should, and that's not the biggest spoiler in the world. Anyway, so hello, Noe. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome. So those are the two big questions I wanted to get to at the beginning. And then I wanted to do something, like I said, I was going through some notes. I was trying to sort out some notes to teach stuff. And I ran into a bunch of notes that I wrote 25 years ago when I was really struggling to figure out how to write. I was trying to write a novel. I was trying to write a screenplay, and it was really painful. I've talked about that in some of my videos. Anyway, I found the beginnings of this class, this teaching that I'm doing here, was me trying to teach myself, and I literally wrote it down because I really believe the best way to think for a writer is to write things down. I would write down to myself little lessons I had learned, which eventually have developed into the lessons that you are seeing now. Hello, Sarah. Welcome. So I wanted to share some of these with you because first of all, you'll see, like, I was in serious pain, but also I found I did come to some amazingly cool conclusions. Here I wrote, I get upset. I feel like I'm a million miles away from the finished project. But if I'm on the right path, then that is where I must begin. What I fear is not being on the path. The path is the text itself. That's what I must remember. All the notes in the world are not the first step, the text itself. Because I have a tendency to I will write notes and outlines until the end of time. I have frequently outlined whole novels and then not written them because I just overdid it. I took too long. I lost the momentum. I was too intimidated by my own notes and the demands of them. Anyway, so I was in those notes, I was trying to say to myself, okay, you've got to just start writing. And then I wrote, it is impossibly hard for me to accept these crude first shapes will grow into solid and graceful. I have to believe in that, a little bit at a time, a sentence getting clear, a single paragraph, and then I have to set that section aside. Move on. It's better than it was, chapter by chapter, over and over and over. So this was me talking to myself, essentially writing in my journal, writing notes to myself, just saying, like, don't freak out because you don't feel good when you're writing that rough draft, when you are trying to figure out, even though you've planned it to the nth degree, you still have this awful feeling when you are starting. And I wanted to show you, I can talk now about how it's relatively easy for me. That's 30 years later, 30 years writing every single day. And that's what I had to teach myself then, because for a long time, I just wouldn't do it. I would write notes, I would change projects, I would do anything rather than actually just bumble through like I'm trying to show you I do on the step-by-step thing. And now I've gotten really comfortable with it. I trust when you do this bit by bit, you will get it. So here's another one. Every day, by the way, you will feel fear. I was talking to myself. You will feel fear. It isn't enough. It won't work. You'll feel dread. You aren't inspired. Even though there had been sparks while outlining, the whole project suddenly seems worthless and intimidating. The only way to begin is plunge in. Try and find one moment to write down. Any moment. A line. This is like, I tell you because I told me. That's what I wanted you to see. These are from the 90s that I wrote these notes to myself. Oh, thank you. Yes, I know. That's what's real. What's really shocking is more than 35 years ago, when I was in high school and struggling with this, I was trying to get this and I was kind of getting it and I just didn't believe it. So I started to write it down because it was like, I struggled a long time with these feelings that a lot of you tell me about. I don't think it's good enough. It doesn't feel right. And the things I'm trying to teach you are what you do about that. Let me see. I did that one. So, okay, here's another one. So I wrote, push through a little bit every day. Choose a specific action. Start to describe it roughly. Begin to make the character play out their moments. That's what I tell you. And I was telling myself 25 years ago. And then this one was just really good. It is enough to get one moment because we only live one moment at a time. And I thought that may be the most valuable thing a writer can know. It's really, really important. You just have to get one moment at a time. Thank God you're not like performing jazz or acting on a stage. You just have to write a little thing and it stays. It stays written. You didn't lose it. And then you can add other ones. And pretty soon you have the whole thing. Um, yes, yeah, commonplace books. Commonplace books are in theory, you're taking you if you see a quote you like, you write it down in the commonplace book. So it's different from a journal because it's not your thoughts. The idea of a commonplace books is that you, as you read, you keep a little book by your side. This is in the days before you could just snap a picture with your phone. And if you see a passage you like and you want to keep it and you don't want to lose it, because if you underline it in the book, you'll never see it again. So you write it in the commonplace book. So yes, if anyone wants to commonplace these, if you're going to commonplace something, this is the one. This is the one I want to say. I may put that up as like on social media. Thanks, I'm so glad. Good, because the end result of that is a good thing. Is if you keep going, you will get someplace. And now, this is Shonda Rhimes, in which she said, if you want to call yourself a writer, you need to write every day, even if it's one line. And that is true. Although, and I can tell you this, give yourself a break if you take a day off. It's like if you miss a day, it's fine. But as a general practice, yes. Every day, try and write something. I write, honestly, every day, like holidays, birthday, it doesn't matter. I don't feel good if I don't write a little something every day. And once again, Dandelion, we're actually going to start yours next. You asked me a question the other day. I felt bad. I didn't answer it, so I wrote on my sticky, which you can't see because of the way the lighting is, but it says, my influences. Dan, you asked about influences that I had when I was starting out. And it took a while to compile them, but never finishing anything, starting new projects. Don't do that. You make a little note of them, fine. But focus on one. Here's my deal on starting new things, because I always am thinking of new things to do. The deal I made to myself is you are allowed to start as many things as you want as long as you are doing the one you have chosen to get done first. If you want to spend the afternoon, if you write in the morning and you get whatever, a page done, whatever it is, or a bit of your outline, whatever. If you do that work, then in the afternoon you get an idea for another thing, you want to write about that, make some notes, start it, do it, fine. As long as you're doing what you have to do, you can do the other things too. Say thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, well, we're all going to die in the middle of something. Dickens died in the middle of writing Edwin Drood, Beethoven in the middle of the 10th Symphony, Schubert in the middle of his unfinished symphony. We all, artists don't give up. We never stop. So therefore, you're gonna die in the middle of something. So just do as much as you can while you can. And now I'm going to get into, because this is going to take a long time, movies or TV that influenced you when you were starting out. But hold on, I have to talk about BoJack for a second. It gets easier every day, but you got to do it every day. That's the hard part. Yes, this is why BoJack is truly a great show. You might think animated show with animals in Hollywood, not going to be good. It is a solid Hollywood story of emotion and recovery and trauma and bad behavior and a lot of other stuff, and it's funny. So, damn, yes. It gets easier every day, but you got to do it every day. That's the hard part. Excellent quote. That goes in somebody's commonplace book, mine possibly. Yeah, you got to keep plugging away. Okay, now we're going to do some fun stuff, which is influences. This is very important. This is not stuff I'm necessarily saying is good. It may not be for you. It was things that influenced me. And it influenced me 50 years ago, okay? We're talking the stuff that when I was a young teen and in my 20s, these were the things that came into my life. Some of them were new, some of them were old. But that does not mean that I'm saying, you should see these things because they will influence you. They may not. Who knows? I'm not putting anything in here that I actually, cringe at. There's some stuff that's iffy, but the stuff that for whatever reason, it fit into the open slots in my head. We all have different shaped holes in our heads, and the things from the world go into them, and some of them fit, and some of them they don't fit, and they bounce off. But you know it when they fit because you feel like this connection. You often hear about a lot of rock musicians talk about the first moment they heard the Beatles or Elvis or Dylan, whoever, or I guess now you young folks could be Nirvana or Tupac or I don't know what. The main thing is everybody has those things, and there are often a lot of them, and frankly they still show up. I mean, there's things that came in the past couple of years that knocked my socks off and clicked for me in that influential way. Influential meaning it either shows you a way to do things or makes you want to do the thing they're doing. Like it may be like, oh, this solves a problem I had, or it could be like, oh, I didn't even know you could do this. Cool, I want to do that. Yes, I was young back in the 1960s and 70s. So here's some stuff. Let's start. When I started out, James Bond was the thing. Thunderball was my favorite at the time, but I saw every single thing. By the way, the other thing you should know, 50 years ago, it was hard to see stuff. There was nothing was on demand. You could not actually see a movie unless it happened to be playing in the theaters. Once it was gone, it was gone, unless they had what they call revival houses or they would re-release things. I saw Thunderball as a re-release because it came out when I'm pretty sure it came out before I was going to the movies. I'm actually not positive about that. But I do know that I saw a re-release of The Guns of Navarone. That was a 1961 movie. I was only 3 years old. I didn't see it then. But what I did see was I was about 10. They re-released it in theaters. My family went, and it knocked me out. Guns of Navarone is just a very solid war story about these guys on this impossible mission to disable some giant guns on a Greek island in the Mediterranean that's going to shoot down troop ships, saving a whole bunch of troops. It's like 5 or 6 guys. It's your basic. Actually, there's some women involved, but it's a team of people. They're all very different. They don't know each other. They've all got strengths, all got weaknesses. Everything that you would want from your people on a mission story, and it opened up a whole world to me of adventure and storytelling. When I was a little older, I saw this on television at the time, a movie called Charade. I'm just going to leave it in front of my face. Charade is a movie directed by Stanley Donen and written by Peter Stone, but basically it's a Hitchcock movie. These people said, we want to make a movie that's like a Hitchcock movie, and so they took certain elements of Hitchcock storytelling, a mixture of romance and comedy and suspense thriller stuff. It is very dated now. All these things are going to be, I think, but Charade is, if you want to see, first of all, just dazzlingly good storytelling. Just like characters, plot, set pieces, a terrific puzzle. It's a terrific movie, even though it is the most absurd, ridiculous, fantastical. No one could believe this was real. There was no intention of being real. It is, however, I think, tremendously entertaining. It had a huge effect on me. One of the big things that it did for me was it introduced me to the concept of the romantic comedy thriller. Now, this was a thing, in fact, I'll talk a little bit more later about Hitchcock and North by Northwest, which was a huge influence on Charade. But this concept of the romantic comedy thriller, it's a very small subgenre, and it is amazing. And the first script I wrote, the first original script I wrote was, in fact, a romantic comedy thriller. And it served me well for 30 years. That script kept on getting optioned and people picked it up and wanted it. different stars were attached to everything. No one could ever make it because it was a romantic comedy thriller, and the genre was bugging everyone. They were like, well, isn't there kind of too much comedy? Why don't we make it more of a thriller? And then the others were like, well, why don't we make the thriller part less and make the comedy part? But the whole point about this genre and about charade is that it's all of them at once. And that really appeals to me. I am very much a genre blender. I am very much a blender. Like I want to pull together as many different things as possible. My goal would be to have a story that never ended, that consumed every genre at all times. And so also I grew up in the 60s and 70s at a moment when studio and art film were weirdly blended. So I found myself believing that was possible, and very quickly the studios gave up on that. But for me, I never could quite give up on it. Romancing the Stone, yes, yeah. Although that's almost that's more of a romantic comedy adventure, which is slightly different. But once again, you'll find Romancing the Stone is a subgenre that pops up now and then sinks again, and people say, oh, you can't do that, you can't mix the genres. Right now there's one which I don't think is doing too well with Sandra Bullock. Anyway, romantic comedy thriller, more like North by Northwest. Grosse Pointe Blank is a really good example of a later one, which is a marvelous movie. I just don't consider it influence because it came too late to influence me. It more or less reassured me. I was like, you can do this. You can have somebody be incredibly funny, and yet there's like serious stakes and violence, and it's great. Anyway, another thing that just absolutely knocked me out was, and I think I've talked about it before, there was this little indie film, and it was one of the earliest indie films actually to do well. It was 1977. It's called Between the Lines, and it's an ensemble comedy story about a bunch of people working for what was at the time a common thing, which was the alternative paper. In this case, in Boston, in New York, it was the Village Voice. Here in LA, it's the LA Weekly. Most cities had, in the 60s and 70s, had an alternative paper where they were like the radical voices were, but also the personal ads. It was an interesting world. It's an amazing cast. There's a lot of it that's not. Most of this stuff is not good. It's going to seem very old. It's 50 years old, folks. However, I got to say, it's just it's got that tone of casual romance and comedy and ensemble plotting that you have to see it to get it. But it's a great piece. Thriller. There are not that many of them. A thriller is essentially a story in which there is usually some kind of life or death stakes. There's some kind of dark, threatening danger, and the main characters are engaged in saving a life, killing someone, whatever it is. I mean, like there's a thriller called Day of the Jackal, which is about an assassin trying to assassinate Charles de Gaulle and a police officer who's trying to stop him. So you're just cutting back and forth between the two sides. There's thrillers in which someone is, it veers towards film noir, but it's also crime films or spy films can be thrillers. Thrillers are generally crime-oriented or danger-oriented dramas, basically. If I had to explain, it's a weird genre because it consumes a bunch of others. Okay, now this is it's a romantic comedy thriller and kind of an ensemble movie that none of you has ever heard of. And it is, I think, brilliant. And it was hugely influential to me. It's called Slither. There is a later horror film called Slither. This is not it. This is Slither from 1973. I will type these out and try and put them into the description overnight. But this movie, Slither, basically it's about this ex-con, James Caan, is just released from prison. He's got this older guy who's also released, who he knew in prison. They're leaving their first day of freedom, and I'll leave that up. They go to the older guy's house, and the older guy gets killed. And as he's dying, he gives him a message. He's like, go to meet this guy, give him this thing, because the money that they stole, he was a bank robber or something. This guy has the money. So this guy goes to meet this other guy. He meets this girl on the way. The other guy says, yeah, but the money was hidden in this other place with this other guy. So it becomes this kind of road movie comedy, but they start to get followed by these sinister vans. It's a really delightful, offbeat, oddball thing. I actually found this review by Roger Ebert. It's rare to find a really goofy movie these days, and even harder to find a goofy chase movie. The big studios must have built-in goofiness detectors at their front gate, programmed to reject scripts that aren't either simply serious or funny. Slither falls right between the two poles. It's like the last big goofy movie, Brewster McCloud, which, by the way, I meant to mention that. Brewster McCloud, it's amazing. Maybe Hollywood thinks audiences getting uneasy when they're asked to change gears during a movie. It certainly seems that way. You get a lot of one-note movies these days, yet audiences seem to like funny, serious movies like Where's Papa or The Heartbreaker. These are also great. Anyway, so this movie that exactly states it. Funny, serious. It's a really weird, hard balance, but it's amazing when it works. And so that had a huge influence on me when I saw it. Came out in the theater, so it's 1973, so I was 15. Also at the time, there was a play. A play was a huge influence called Sleuth. There's a movie of it. It's okay. There's actually 2 movies of it. They're okay, but they can't really convey how cool the play was. It's a 2-person play, and it's a small cast play, and it's about a crime writer who invites this guy over to dinner, who's his wife's hairdresser. And it turns out the hairdresser is having an affair, and the mystery writer has invited him over to murder him. And he's like explaining how he's going to murder him. And it's all involved with games. It's a freaking brilliant mind game, character game. It's just fabulous. It's really, really a clever story about people playing mind games with each other. And I saw it on Broadway when I was 13, and it changed my life. I recognized that there was the ability to do this byplay between characters, which was both funny and self-conscious and yet wickedly serious. It's a dance of how people behave that really really amazing. And I think all the things that I'm going to show you, almost all of them have that quality of the characters being offbeat and interesting and working on each other, which I think is just great. Well, and now I'm going to show you 2 very different. This was also the era, it was 1970 and 1972, Airport and Poseidon Adventure, the beginning of the era of disaster movies. Opposite poles in many ways. Like I said, I'm constantly trying to bring together everything. Airport and Poseidon Adventure are both actually really good. Poseidon Adventure is better than Airport, but both of them are serious movies in which the point is to examine, in the Airport case, it was based on a book. There's this guy named Arthur Haley who would write these deeply researched books. So this was about what an airport is, like how it works, all the different things. But there's a plot about a terrorist. That's a great question. Who wrote Sleuth? Sorry about that. I will come back to that when I'm not blocking you. Anyway, so Airport. It's about a guy. It's about the people who are flying a plane, people who are flying on the plane, people who are running the airport, people who are running the cargo. There's a snowstorm. There's a guy with a bomb who wants to blow up the plane for insurance purposes. It's great. It's a terrific, terrific story. It's an old-fashioned, hokey studio film from 1970, but it's really a 50s movie, if you ask me. Poseidon Adventure is actually really cool because it's about a bunch of people who are in an ocean liner, gets hit by a rogue wave. The ocean liner flips upside down. And so these people are trapped in an upside down sinking cruise ship, and they have to get up through the bottom. They have to go up through the bottom of the ship. So they are working their way in an upside down ship. And it's just graphically cool. I mean, to think what happens when you're walking on the ceiling and the stairway is up ahead of you. It's really good. But it's about a bunch of people. The whole point about this is they're ensembles. And I love ensembles. Yes, towering. Oh, I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, these were the first two of this genre of disaster films. An ensemble of people. I'm sorry about the gardeners outside. An ensemble of people who are brought together, in this case, by a disaster. And so you get these little mini stories within the story. I love that. And so these had a huge influence because I love big ensemble stories. It later became, with Towering Inferno and Earthquake and a lot of other movies, sort of a lousy genre because they didn't bother to make the characters interesting. And so that became sad. However, there are later things like Crash, which is not a disaster film, but is an ensemble film. And a lot of TV shows are ensembles in which the point is that you get an insight into people and society, and very often into the ways that things work in our lives. And so it's an opportunity to be thoughtful and yet at the same time just damn entertaining. Gene Hackman is great. Gene Hackman plays a sort of progressive priest. And there's anyway. Disaster movies were another really big influence. Then another re-release that I saw, it came out in '69, so I don't think I saw it when it first came out, but probably pretty close to then. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I cannot recommend this enough. This is not just influential on me. This is influential on movies, and it's just so solid. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, written by William Goldman, who is well worth studying, but this particularly is just a masterpiece of writing. You get an enormous amount of characters. And the other thing about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is it's about undermining the genre. It's a Western, but it is about, as he famously said, this is the true story of one of the biggest bandits of the West, and the railways banded together, got a whole bunch of lawmen together and put a super posse on them, on Butch and Sundance and their gang, and said, we're going to shut them down. So they ran away. They went to South America. And that is and with it, that is the biggest mind-blowing undermining of the genre. But scene by scene, almost every single scene is about rethinking our understanding of cliches. And it's magnificent. Later, the William Goldman is a very entertaining writer, and he wrote a book called Marathon Man. The movie is good. It's a good movie. It's nowhere near as good as the book. It's a cool movie, though. But the book is really good because it keeps shifting points of view, and it's about conversational writing style. So it's just really great to read. So that had a huge influence on me in terms of thriller construction and thriller and character. It's all about what matters in this plot is what the people are thinking and feeling and who they are, where they come from, what their needs are. That's what I love about Goldman, is it's always character-based. Likewise, I've mentioned before, Clute, a character-based thriller about a small-town cop who comes to the big city trying to find a friend of his who was last seen in the company of a prostitute. The cop befriends a high-end call girl in New York, and together they close in on what happened to the missing small-town guy. It's fabulous. Also, now, I absolutely recognize and agree with the horrible the need to condemn what Woody Allen did as a person. I have a real I don't want to say anything that would suggest that I am supporting in any way his side of the argument that he was not an abusive person. He clearly was, in my opinion. However, his movie Play It Again, Sam, which he wrote and starred in, did not direct, and it's just an amazingly funny and well played and well constructed romantic comedy. And furthermore, Annie Hall changed my life. The cinematic explorations, creativity involved in Annie Hall, and the opening up of new conceptions of what behavior and romantic characters could be. It's just an important and influential work. The guy is a monster. I am not in any way saying that he should still work. I'm okay with that. But I can't say he was not influential to me, and furthermore, influential on the culture and the history of film. So those were very big influences on me. It's been difficult over the past decade or so to discover, as I think we often do, that the person who made the art that we love is not someone that we can remotely tolerate. So moving on. The other thing, Annie Hall, when it came out, 1977, I saw it 6 times in 1 week. I went to the theater. At this time, that's how you saw movies. I saw it 6 times in 1 week. I stayed twice. I went 3 days and stayed twice. Saw it twice because they let you do that in those days. So I would just sit there, watch the movie, sat there until the movie started again, watched it again. The only other movie I did that with was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which blew me away. I was a big Spielberg fan. Jaws knocked me out. Jaws, and all of these are just groundbreaking movies in terms of both using the Hollywood studio system and at the same time pushing it into new places, having new kinds of heroes or new kinds of scenes, and yet solidly entertaining. Spielberg's just an extremely gifted director. A lot of his movies are not great. These two are old, but truly fabulous. Javier, I was wondering about you. Cinco de Mayo, indeed. Hello. I hope you are enjoying a margarita for me. At the same time, there was a movie that came out that was very influential, though I did not like it, but it was influential. This happens sometimes. French Connection was an extremely influential movie. It changed filmmaking in a way forever. The bringing in of documentary style and foreign film style to a Hollywood cop story was groundbreaking. And there was a lot of techniques about how a story was told that really opened up things that we now take as commonplace, but they were really new when he did them. He didn't entirely have control over what he was doing from what I've read. Friedkin, who is William Friedkin, is the director. He also did The Exorcist, and then went on to make some, To Live and Die in LA is an 80s movie that's actually fabulously made. It's kind of a piece of junk in many ways, but also really well made, with some great actors in it. Anyway, Friedkin was very influential for me in his breaking down of the safe studio system. What he had to say was always incoherent and always objectionable. Friedkin is a disaster. The only movie that he made that I think speaks well in a coherent way is The Exorcist, and that's because he didn't write the script or have any control over the script. So anyway, if you get a chance, Sorcerer. It's a terrible movie, but it's an amazing movie. It's a remake of a French thriller about a bunch of guys in South America who've all ended up in South America because of things they've done wrong in Europe, in America. They're criminals or disgraced in some way, and they end up in this oil town, and they need an oil well is on fire, and the oil company needs somebody to drive a truck full of dynamite and nitroglycerin on these, as you can see, like over a rickety bridge and through winding mountain jungle roads. So these four bad guys are in this truck, two trucks, driving explosives that can go off at any moment. It's an amazing story. And The Wages of Fear is the original. It's a great old French film. And then Friedkin made Sorcerer, which is a remake. All right. Now, I've also discussed this before. Oh, Lucky Man breaks about 1 billion rules of filmmaking, or not filmmaking, conventional film storytelling, while at the same time actually using very acceptable literary rules of storytelling from hundreds of years before, from ancient novels, not ancient novels, 19th century novels, 18th century novels. Anyway, it's Oh Lucky Man. It's this episodic story of this young man's journey through finding himself, and it's, once again, it's funny. It's got musical songs. They're rock and roll songs. It's not a musical, but there's a rock and roll band in the story which also plays songs. He goes through different parts of society. It's just really cool. When I saw it, I was like, I don't know what I'm watching, but this is amazing. And often, actually, there's movies that I saw that are just you don't know what's going to happen next. That's a really important quality for me. Not to just have things randomly be weird, but to have a sense of, I am willing to break some rules or go in unexpected places. That matters a lot to me. Yes, Live and Die in L.A. has, Friedkin famously broke new ground with the French Connection car chase. Bullitt and had sort of upped the stakes, said who can do a great car chase. Friedkin did this amazing car chase in French Connection. It's referenced 1 billion times since then, including in the new Batman movie. Anyway, so then 15, 20 years later, he's sort of on the skids. He's not doing too well, and he decides to do another movie to bring himself back, and he has another car chase. And this chase is on a freeway going the wrong way. It's great. So it's very fun. All right. So speaking of movies where it's I don't understand what I'm seeing, 1974, The Parallax View is a political thriller about the possibility that there's a sinister corporation which hires out to assassinate politicians for money. And it's part of the paranoid trilogy of a director named Alan Pakula, who did Parallax View and All the President's Men and Clute, I believe, actually. So the Parallax View, it's very indirect. It's really art. It's really European film influenced. So it's just this amazing. The storytelling is just great. It's very, very we're not going to tell you stuff. You're going to figure it out as you go along, and it's very indirect. And the ending is disturbing. And I remember watching, no, wait, that's not how it ends, is it? And yes, which honestly, that happened to me with The Godfather too. First time I saw Godfather, I was that doesn't make any sense. How can that end with him being bad? I was young. Anyway, yes, Live and Die makes Dafoe the Picasso of counterfeiting all the way through. Willem Dafoe is great. And the artistry of counterfeiting is one of the real joys of that movie. Yes, absolutely. Okay, and Turturro is really funny in it. Okay, so now, at the same time, you have to remember, these, I'm showing you movies, they came out in the theater in the 1970s, and that was great, but so you didn't go to the movies that often. Maybe you went once a week if you were lucky, but that's really not the case. Most of the movies I saw were on television. So that brings us to Hitchcock. North by Northwest. This is is one of the first of these romantic comedy thrillers. And Rear Window is an astonishing piece of studio work in which an entire set of apartment buildings was built on the studio so that you could do a story about a guy who has a broken leg, and so he can't leave his apartment, so he's looking at all the apartments around him, and he begins to get involved in all the lives. It's just fabulous. This is just great storytelling. But then also, as I said, Saboteur, which is about an innocent. Hitchcock often talks about innocent men or innocent people who are dragged into plots, dangerous thriller plots. So once again, there's a certain sense of romantic comedy. He gets, I believe, handcuffed to a woman, and he's framed for sabotage of a factory during the war, and he has to prove that in fact it was this conspiracy of Nazis in America blowing crap up. It's just a great, fun, entertaining thriller. On the dark side is one of his last movies, Frenzy. The movie culture had changed. Nudity and violence could be shown on screen. Hitchcock had made his entire career out of implying a lot of things, although he broke through a lot of barriers with Psycho. He opened up a lot of minds with Psycho. So once things loosened up, once the rating system began to die, in 1972, he made a movie called Frenzy, which is actually written by Anthony Schaefer. That was the question. Anthony Schaefer. Sorry, going to go back. Rachel Waring. Who wrote Sleuth? Anthony Schaefer, whose brother Peter Schaefer wrote Equus. Anthony Schaefer wrote this script for Hitchcock about a serial killer and a guy who gets blamed for being the serial killer. It is very disturbing. It is, I'm not kidding. Be careful. The trigger warning. This movie is very disturbing. I think it's brilliant, but it's not. It's ghastly in many ways. It is both trying to repel you and yet at the same time making aesthetic sexual murder. It's a very disturbing movie, but really cool. Likewise, old movies, Casablanca. This is a brilliant piece of work. And if you read the behind the scenes story, you'll know they did not know they were making a brilliant piece of work. They thought it was a mess, and it was a mess while they were making it. Let me answer that because that's a good thing. Implying is not always better than showing. It depends, but if you choose that style, then do it. If you wanna show it, cool. Like Hitchcock often is really on the nose. That's cool too. But Parallax is very full of implying. All right, so Casablanca. Sorry, let me take Javier off there. And the Philadelphia Story. These are both studio films from the early 1940s. They are, or mid 1940s for Philadelphia Story. Anyway, Philadelphia Story is based on a play. It's a romantic comedy about rich people and a big wedding where she's marrying the wrong guy, and some gossip reporters get invited into the wedding, and it's just like moment by moment, just brilliant, sparkling, clever characters and dialogue. It's just yummy if you like that kind of thing. Likewise, I've talked before about The Apartment, Billy Wilder, 1960, one of the great romantic comedies of all time. At a turning point from the Philadelphia Story, the rich people's wedding, The Apartment is about a poor schnook working in a corporation who has compromised himself morally, and it's about finding love despite moral failure. This man also wrote and directed Sunset Boulevard, which is truly a Hollywood story. It is amazing. His name is Billy Wilder, for those of you who do not know. He also did Sunset Boulevard is one of the truly, truly great film noirs. And then he also did Some Like It Hot, which is a thing unto itself, but it is a comedy about two jazz musicians in the 1920s who witness a gangland massacre, and so they have to leave town. The only way they can leave town is part of a band because they don't have any money, so they have to hire on to a band that's about to go on tour. The only band that's going on tour is all women, so they dress as women. Yes, today this would not be a great story to tell. This movie is old, but as an old movie, it's got some amazing stuff going on, and just some. What's really interesting about Some Like It Hot is the amount of empathy given to people who ordinarily comedies would make ridiculous. And they are ridiculous, but there's also empathy. And I think that's also true of Sunset Boulevard, and basically everything in that he did, that Billy Wilder did. There's this great sense of character and empathy while people are doing foolish and dangerous and ugly things. Likewise, Double Indemnity, one of the great film noirs of all time. These are all by Billy Wilder. All four of these movies, The Apartment, Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, Double Indemnity, just some of what this man Billy Wilder did. He is amazing. Hang on, Doughboy. Let me see. Let me get through it. Well, ask what it is, and then we'll see. If I can't answer it now, because I still have a bunch of these to go, I think I'm going to probably put it off till another time. But ask it now so that I can get it on the record. Yes, Stalag 17. Billy Wilder was a legend. And as I said, most of these things I saw on television, which meant, by the way, interrupted by commercials. But now and then there would be some theaters that would run old movies. They were called revival houses. They would usually have a double feature. And they would change every couple of days. They would just churn through these old movies. And that's where you got your film education in those days. One such double feature that my mom actually took me to when I was a teenager was The Manchurian Candidate and 12 Angry Men. These are two stunningly good movies from the late 50s and early 60s, black and white dramas, thrillers, just intricately plotted and yet always convincing, always people operating out of their character and their feelings, and yet operating on a level of ideas. They are just amazing. Amazing movies. All right. Do you think it's... Hold on. No. Briefly, no. First of all, only apply 3 acts to the story as a whole. Definitely. You can. Yes. You can also apply it to each arc. Like if you want to say this person's story and their story does happen to go through the 3 acts, they may have it. But 3-act is not the only way to tell a story. I am going to actually talk about that another time, but the main thing is the 3-act structure. Really think about the 3-act structure simply as beginning, middle, and end. The middle is bigger, the ends and the beginning are smaller, short time-wise. There are no other real meanings to the 3-act structure. All those rules that people tell you about the 3-act structure, I am going to actually make a video at some point about how it's nice, but it's actually very narrow and damaging. But certainly for each character's arc, they may not be on a 3-act structure. They may be on a 2-act or even a 1-act or a 5-act. It's hard to say, and definitely not each episode. Each scene does not have a 3-act structure. Ace in the Hole. Holy crap, I forgot about that. One of the great cynical, brutal, fascinating movies about a reporter reporting on a man who is stuck in a cave. It becomes a media circus, one of the first media circus movies. Yes, Chandler. Yeah, Wilder never wrote alone. Wilder always had writing partners, and they were all great. Indeed, Houston. He weirdly, not personally that influential, and this is just influence. I remember this is not like a movie like movies to watch list. This is a movies I watched when I was a teenager and young man. So I saw Asphalt Jungle. I saw a lot of Houston. African Queen actually is my favorite. But he's kind of too down the middle for me. I like a little more bending of genres and unexpectedness. Uh, the truth is that John Huston tends to play it straight. Like Maltese Falcon is straight noir. It's great. It's amazing noir, but it's straight noir. Whereas Double Indemnity is more twisted. Okay, so just while we're at it, 1969, it's sort of hard for you to see. They shoot horses, don't they? Let me see if I can make this bigger. They shoot horses, don't they? It is an astonishing movie. It is very hard to find now, but They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Is about some people who go into what's called a dance marathon. In the 1930s, in the Depression, they had these contests where people had to dance for like a week or two straight. They were not allowed to stop dancing. They had like 15-minute breaks or stuff. And whoever survived won a big cash prize. It's literally the Hunger Games with dancing in this. It is such an amazing movie because it tells a very straightforward story in a not straightforward way, and there's some techniques in it that were mind-blowing to me. Now and then they'll have certain dance numbers that they were forced to do that they filmed in slow motion, and it's agonizing. It's brilliant. There's a lot of structural stuff in it, but mainly it's just solid, insightful storytelling that also is a critique of American society. It's damn good. Likewise, just solid storytelling. 3 Days of the Condor changed my life. It's just so good. It's just such a good example of completely solid storytelling where you really don't know the first time where it's going. Once again, it's a somewhat ordinary person. He's got certain gifts. But he's not. He's just this clerk in a CIA office who gets involved in spy stuff. He gets involved in what is without question a dubious romantic interlude. But I think they handle it pretty well considering he is kidnapping her. But it's just great. It's just such a great movie, and I really love it. What's on YouTube? Yeah. They Shoot Horses. Yes, it's on DVD too. It's just very hard. It's hard to find streaming wise, but try and get a good copy. If possible, get the DVD. It's a gorgeous movie. Now this one, I'm not going to say this is. By the way, this is really funny because this poster, it's called Odd Man Out, and they say the most exciting motion picture ever made. That's just silly. It's not even that exciting a motion picture. It's really not. It's just a fascinating motion picture. Hang on just a second. Yes, Condor has a great. You can't miss the inciting incident in Condor. It's great. It is really good. What's actually fascinating about Condor, just you want to break Condor apart structurally and storytelling wise, and how you get character in and how you make set pieces work. What's really cool is in the title sequence of Condor, you meet this whole world, this whole set of characters, and you get a really good sense of them. And that's just in the opening credits, followed by murder. They all get killed. It's good stuff. Okay, just a few more here, but I do want to talk about Odd Man Out, and I'll talk about it another time. Just in terms of, this is a movie that makes the 3-act structure a joke. It breaks almost every rule of conventional storytelling, Hollywood storytelling, not conventional storytelling. It's about an Irish Republican Army leader who has been broken out of prison by his gang, and he's broken out. I think he's broken out, maybe released. Anyway, the point is he's in hiding, and they're going to pull a robbery of a factory to get some money for the organization. But the robbery goes wrong, And so he ends up wounded and wandering Dublin overnight, while everyone's hunting for him and his gang is dealing with the fact that the thing went wrong and he's wandering wounded. And it is, all it does is it just follows different people getting different angles of this situation. Even the main character, it's not really his story. It's the story of how this problem, which is really about the problem of the Irish situation, the need for an Irish Republican army because of the occupation, that there's it's about how everyone in this city overnight is dealing with the problem of a man who is wounded and on the run for his political terrorism. And he ends up, there's a priest, there's a painter who wants to paint his portrait as he's dying because he thinks that will make it the greatest art. There's the political people. It's really cool. It's all street level. It's all just the people that are in the streets. It's really, really a cool movie, and it does not follow any logical Hollywood sense, and it's quite amazing. I wanted to talk briefly about Neil Simon, the plays of Neil Simon. There's a book, The Plays of Neil Simon. Barefoot in the Park, Odd Couple, Star Spangled Girl. He wrote, in his early part of his career especially, he wrote some freaking amazing comedies. Just great writing. The best version you're going to find on screen, aside from Odd Couple and Barefoot in the Park a little bit, but The Goodbye Girl is a stunning example of his style of comedy in a romantic comedy. I love romantic comedies. Gotta tell you, it doesn't age well. She's whiny. Their relationship is kind of unpleasant in many ways. The solution is not great. However, it's just great. It was very influential to me in my life, just in terms of like, wow, you can tell a story with this much comic style and still have them be believable human beings. That's the key. Likewise, just a couple more because I'm running along. This is once again not really defensible, but I found it very cool. It's Summer of 42. It's set in the 1940s. It's based on a really enjoyable book, actually. But it's about this teenager who's spending the summer on some island off the coast of Massachusetts or something. I don't know where it is. And he falls in love with a woman who's living in one of these beach houses. And he is just pining after. So for like the beginning of the movie is this romantic comedy. The first 3/4 of the movie is this romantic comedy about this boy in love with this older woman. And then all of a sudden, spoiler, but basically he ends up spending a night with her, which was his dream. But because of the circumstances of that, it's actually this profoundly sad and beautiful and non-comic and moving. And the last quarter is just entirely a different tone. And yet to me, it works out perfectly. And that's what I really like about it. Yeah, it's a story of a teenager in love with an older woman and they sleep together, but that's not the point. The point is it's about funny and sad meeting as they should, for me. Yes, absolutely. This is absolutely true. Criterion Collection, if you can afford them, if you can get into them, if you can rent them, if you can do the streaming service, yes, the Criterion makes these things good. And I got a couple more, I think, that are on there. This one, another one, it does not hold up. It's not a great movie, but William Goldman wrote it, and it's dazzlingly filmed in a certain style, 70s style, 1972, The Hot Rock. It's just a caper movie about these four. Once again, I like stories with lots of characters, and all the characters have characters. These four guys are pulled together to steal a jewel, and they have to keep stealing it. Like they steal it from one place, and it ends up getting taken to another place. They have to do like 5 capers in a row, stealing the same jewel over and over again. It's really funny and cool. It doesn't really hold up in many ways. It's dated, but it was hugely influential to me. Just 3 more here. Do the right thing. By now we're moving into the 80s. I'm out of college, but do the right thing. Once again, ensemble at the highest level. Ensemble mixing comedy and drama. Ensemble giving all sorts of different people voices and bringing them together coherently and emotionally without making them cliches. Very, very vivid and crazy. It's political. It's emotional. It's just brilliant, 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 brilliant work. I think it's my favorite of his stuff. I like a lot of his stuff, but this was it. Then, very weird antithesis in some ways. It's just this weird kind of comic film noir about a cartoonist who gets drawn into a murder mystery called Slam Dance, which but it is directed by a guy named Wayne Wang, who was an art film, indie film guy. And this is just a weird, weird, comical noir thriller. And once again, like, I just love, these are things that taught me what you could do with breaking rules and yet still making something coherent and powerful. And finally, just wanted to mention influence. A lot of other, there was a lot of books and things, plays, but there was a TV series, Hill Street Blues, came out in 1981. And it was the one of the beginnings of what we now recognize as a new golden age of television. It's an ensemble show about a police precinct in an unnamed city. It's dazzling. And I haven't watched that much of it, but I would say probably holds up pretty well considering it's this old. Anyway, a legendary, famous old show, but I wanted to mention it. I've gone way, way over my usual hour, but I wanted to play the game as requested, which was to talk about some things that influenced me. Once again, this does not mean that they are accessible to you. They are old. Most of these things are 50 years old. However, I would say, admittedly, some of them not great, but there's something about them that I found opened up possibilities for ways to tell stories or things to tell stories about, or the quality of understanding the characters. That's really, for me, always. I love a lot of stuff that's sort of antiseptic and intellectual, but the truth is, for me, it's always going to be about how much empathy and humanity you can get into whatever weird genre and or ridiculous upside down cruise liner you're going to play with. Let's be careful out there. Yes, indeed. That's a catchphrase from the Hill Street Blues. And Dan, you are welcome. Thank you for asking it. And so I am gonna sign off because it's been a minute now, and so I'm just gonna say, see you tomorrow. Go write something.